I'm going to do a little bit with Howard's Restore here. The lady that owns this radio didn't ask for this. In fact, I had suggested she take the cabinet to a local guy that I work with a lot here in Salt Lake. And she's going to do that later, she said, but she didn't want to do it right now. And that's fine. It's easy enough to remove the chassis from this radio. But what I am going to do is try and dress it up a little bit for her, so that when she picks it up, it kind of looks its best. You know, always like to do what I can to make it look its best. So you know what I do. I take a piece of felt cloth, and I'm going to go ahead and use a little Howard's Restore. When the wood is faded like this wood is, I like to use the ebony brown because it'll put a little color back to it. And so let's just see what we can come up with here. This here I might wind up having to take some isopropyl to get that off of there, because that looks like latex to me, and isopropyl will remove that. In fact, tell you what, guys, give me just a minute. I'll try some latex. I'll try some isopropyl first. I bought this on Amazon about 4 years ago. This is 99.8% concentration of isopropyl alcohol. I bought it so that I could work on reel-to-reel decks and cassette decks and such, but it's handy for this too. But you want to keep the cap tightly closed when you're not using it, because the stuff will dry pretty fast. I understand isopropyl is supposed to take care of latex, so let's see if it'll pull this off. Yeah, it's removing it. It's slow, but it is removing it. See, it is coming off. It's real slow, but it is doing the job. I hope I don't have to use too much of this isopropyl. We'll just see. First you want to maybe soak in it a little bit. There we go. Once it starts breaking it down, it does a pretty good job of getting it fast. That's the first time I ever tried that, guys. I had heard the rumor that isopropyl is the witch's brew of choice for getting latex off, but and I've seen Bob Anderson do it with paint specks on things, so I had a feeling it would work, but I'd never tried it myself. Okay, so let's see if this is latex here. I don't know how people manage to get latex paint on everything. I think people are they're just kind of careless. I can't think of any other reason. All right, so I don't really want to pollute the bottle of the alcohol. All right, so let's see if we can't get this one here off. Just getting these things off of here will spruce it up some. It's coming off of there, but it sure doesn't. Once it starts, it'll be okay, but it doesn't like to start. Wow. I just don't understand it. It's not that hard to lift a radio off the floor and move it somewhere else if you're painting. I don't quite get it. Let's just soak it for a minute. Try something. It's on there pretty thick, so I'm just going to try real gently. Now, I'm not leaving scratches, but there is some discoloration under where this paint was, but that's okay. Now, there we go, much better. Alright, that will help it quite a bit. Let's see if there's any others like that on the radio. Yep. Spot right there. No time like the present to get that nailed. This does not, isopropyl will not take off lacquer, so I'm not going to hurt the lacquer finish. All it does is take this stupid latex off the surface of the lacquer. It's a lot of work. I'm sure that you guys know an easier way, but this is the way I have seen, so this is the way I'll do it. Alright, that's much better. I don't see any more, so now we'll hit her with the Howard's Restore. Let me put this cap on real tight. Not only do I put the cap on tight, but then I put this in a large Ziploc bag that I squeeze all the air out of. And I keep it in a real cool room. This stuff's expensive, that's why I care so much about it. Alright, let's see if we can get closer. Let's hit the top here first. So you get a nice spot on the felt, and then you just go after it like so. And it isn't gonna fix it forever, but it will spruce it up for a while, make it look good. And if you do this a lot, slowly it will last longer and longer. The thing I like about Howard's Restore is that at the same time that you're kind of darkening it and dressing it up, it also cleans it. It's really nice for that. It'll make this look real good. Alright, then you take a nice soft cotton cloth and kind of rub it down. And then you buff it a little bit with the dry side of the cloth just to remove streaks and prints. Definitely better. Not perfect, but definitely better. On the darker on this, especially one that's as heavily damaged as this one is, I'm going to go ahead and give it a second coat. And a little bit heavier this time. And I'll let it sit a little bit longer. Hopefully I'll get a little more color imparted to the damaged spots. This will make scratches and so forth just sort of disappear. Sometimes I'll even do the inside of a radio cabinet with this just to make it look better. Alright, let's do this middle section now. Now, it will look like it's changing the color. It will darken it some, but this thing is faded, so that's what I want. I want to restore some of the color. And if I were to use a lighter tone of, Howard's Restore, it wouldn't darken as much, and this thing needs help. So normally I would use something like an oak, dark oak, or medium oak on this, but this thing needs some help, so we'll go ahead and do it a little bit darker. Try to go with the grain, but it's not terribly critical. One of my nightmares is to drop that can. This room is carpeted. It helps for the sound in here. And one of my nightmares is to drop that can onto the carpet. I have dropped it on a tile floor. It took me a long time to clean it up. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and remove this. It will help the grain to stand out a little bit better. In those areas where the veneer is damaged or missing, it kind of fills those in a little bit better too. This is a lacquer-based material, so it is very, very compatible with the lacquer on the radio. See, look at that. It just gave it, it still looks old, it still looks antique, but it did richen up the appearance a lot. That's all I want. Let's hit the side now. Okay, not bad. Much nicer than it was, and it should last for a while. Let's hit this side. It's got some nice fluting on it, very Art Deco, so this will help dress that up. See how it takes the marks virtually away? They just don't stand out like they did. And this stuff flows really nice, so you can get down in these little corners and it cleans them out while you're doing it. I tell you something, man, I would have no trouble being a salesman for Howard's Restore because I can't say enough good about it. It's good stuff. We'll let that sit for a minute. And I am going to touch this area up here one more time. It's pretty beat up, so I want to do what I can for it. Now, the gloss will go away after a little while. It's not going to stay glossy forever. Let's wipe this off. See, it doesn't make them go away completely, but it does sort of help them to blend in. What do you think? Not too shabby. Give it one more coat and let it sit for a while. And I'll do the front while it sits. You want to kind of... See, the first time kind of softens the worn lacquer a bit. And so you want to take advantage of that. That's why I do the second coat and do it a little heavier and let it sit. Because it's already been sort of pre-softened. If I understand the way this works correctly. Okay. Now, let's kind of lay it on its backside and we'll do the front. Now this does have a speaker cloth in it, and the speaker cloth is in reasonable condition even if it isn't original. So I kind of want to be careful with that in that area so I don't damage the speaker cloth. Let's wipe this off now. Let's hit the front side of this. This has some real nice veneer effects on the front side, and I want to try and bring those out a little bit. It's kind of a cool radio, actually. I like Western Air Patrol radios. I have a small one in a Pooley cabinet upstairs. And Pooley cabinets were originally most commonly used with Atwater Kents. But they sold the cabinets, I don't know if I want to say retail, but they sold the cabinets aside from Atwater Kents, and you could buy them, put just about anything in them you wanted to, if that was your thing. Well, I've got this really cool little Western Air Patrol from 1935. Oh shit, I forgot to get that. That is in this really nice little Pooley cabinet. And one of these days I'll get around to doing that. Because I kind of like this style of Western Air Patrol radios. They're a little different. See, there's latex all over the front of this damn thing. Well, I can't have that. I want to get rid of that. I'm going to get this off of here. And I'll do that latex before I do any more of this. Didn't see it. Guys, you're supposed to be paying attention. I can't believe you didn't say something to me instead of letting me go on. You know, you could have warned me. Oh. So Some of this latex is on pretty loosely, like it just brushed against it. But this here, yeah, that's going to need some alcohol. You know what? I've been doing all this and I've got no windows open. Good Lord, folks. You're really not paying attention, are you? So you kind of get it wet. Some of these little paint spots, these little flecks, a lot of times a screwdriver will take those off. You have to do this carefully with very light pressure because you put a scratch in the wood with that metal screwdriver pretty easily. See, if you're real careful, you can take that speckle off of there with just as in sort of one piece. There we go. All right, let's get back to the Howard's Restore thing, shall we? By the way, the isopropyl makes it look awful. It looks like dried skin after it's done. So you gotta go over it with this stuff to take care of that. If I were doing the cabinet, I would spray this with dark lacquer. I'd tape it off and spray with dark lacquer like Buzz has done on the Philco he recently did. I love the color of this wood. It looks like an antique. It looks like a gramophone. The color has that same sort of tint to it that the old gramophones had. Okay, I'm going to do one more iteration of this, and then I'm going to call it good. I'll have done everything I can do for it. Sometimes when I've done this, people have looked and said, wow, that really can look nice. Maybe I'll go ahead and get that cabinet done after all. And that's kind of a cool thing. That makes me feel good. Not because I'm helping my buddy get business. That's not it at all, because I like seeing just one more radio get completely restored. They're just cool. You would never want to polish that escutcheon. They just look odd when they're shiny. Don't do that. If you've got a radio with like a patinaed brass escutcheon, don't polish it. Even if it was polished when it was new, it's an old radio. You don't want it to look new. You want it to look like a well cared for old radio. At least I hope you do. I mean, you know, there's lots of new radios out there. Just go ask the Chinese. When you're done with the Howard's Restore, it does dry pretty fast, so put your cap on it, okay? Okay, it's looking pretty good. Let me do something really fast. I'm going to lay it down on its face. It isn't complete unless you clean out the inside. The same way that it works on the outside of the cabinet, the Howard's Restore can dress up the inside a little bit too. Give it just that little bit more of a professional job. Just touch it a little bit, make it look like you cared. It's so dang easy to do. I mean, look at what it does for the edges of the inside. This part of the radio, the wood is not finished, so it's really porous, and it soaks up the the dark color of the Howard's Restore, and it looks really nice. Okay. There's no point in buffing this because nothing's going to come off. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to make sure you didn't get the outside edge wet again. Howard's Restore you don't want to leave on there to dry. Except on the inside. It won't hurt the inside because we're not trying to shine the inside. We're not trying to give it a finish. We're just trying to make it look clean and fresh without taking away its age. It will gobble up a lot of Howard's Restore, so you know you just have one of the costs of doing a radio. But it sure does help make it look good. The only ones I really don't do this with too much are the Zeniths, which are painted blue inside. The late 30s and early 40s Zeniths, they were always, the inside of the cabinet was this odd royal blue color. I don't know why. And in that case, I'll either go over it with some blonde Howard's Restore, which is basically clear, you know, kind of non-colored, or I'll just wipe it down with a damp rag. You see how it's cleaning that up, guys? Let me show you. Watch this. And it takes so little effort. I mean, this takes effort. The effort was in learning how to do this, right? Not everybody that hasn't worked on radios would know to do this. You want to try and keep the Restore off of that cable jacket because the cable jacket's original. You want it to look the original color. Well, that's a big no-no. You try not to get it on. Oh, that was just a piece of plastic. Try not to get it on the glass, guys. And if you do, you get it dried off. However, lacquer thinner will remove it. Okay. All that's left really is the floor of the inside of this, and we're done. Check that out. Look at that. Now, the chassis is going to cover a lot of that. I get that. That's fine. But there's some of it won't cover. And you want that to look nice. See, it's not going to look like a new radio. It just looks like a nice old radio instead of a ratty old radio. And it'll look like I spent a gob of time on it when I really didn't. That'll be our little secret, okay? Now don't bother doing this unless you really don't mind going through the Restore, because the interior soaks up a lot of it. But I personally think it's worth its bang for the buck. Damn. Don't call the cabinet finished unless you replace the feet. Those metal feet are just no good. They scratch things up. You can use felt or you can use these nylon feet. On this one I'm using the nylon because the felt wouldn't stick to the wood, but the nylon are little tacks and they tacked right in. So I think this cabinet is ready for a radio to go in it, okay? What do you think? So I'll get started on putting the chassis in there and I'll show you how we're doing here shortly. Here's a look at one of those feet that I put on the bottom of that cabinet. You see it's just a little tack about a ½ an inch long. I buy them, $400 or $500 at a time on Amazon. They're really cheap, so you won't spend much on them, and they're nice to have around. By the way, I should have shown you, but it's too late. I already put those in. When you tap them in, use a really light hammer and just start them in with that hammer. Hold them with a pair of the tweezer nose pliers to get them in position so you don't smack your finger with the hammer. Just get it started and then take a small wooden block. I use a wooden dowel, a 1 inch diameter wooden dowel, and tap it in with that. That way you make sure you don't crack this, because if you strike this with the hammer at even the smallest angle, it will crack. But if you use a wooden dowel and you're gentle about it, it'll work pretty well. Okay, let's go ahead and slip the chassis in here. So I'm just going to set this in like so. It barely fits, so washers would not work. It helps if I have the cord out of the way. What do you think? Oh, there you go again, letting me do something stupid and not stopping me. Really, guys, I thought you were my friends. Thought you would help me out. Instead, you just keep letting me do dumb things. I don't know, I can't tell you how many times I've done this, by the way, with radios. Over and over and over, I go and put a chassis in that has a knob on it. I don't know why I do that. It's like a mental block or something. There we go. Alright. I had to go lace my hands on some hardware for this. So now I have it. Let's see if we can get this to work now. A couple of bolts is all I needed and some washers. Alright, boys and girls, there we have it. Chassis is mounted. Nothing to it on this radio. I'll go ahead and connect the speaker now, since I'm there. Okay, when I turn this, you probably can't hear it, but that needle rubs on the glass just a little bit on this side. I can see it too. So I'm going to have to remove this escutcheon, pull that off, and bend that needle in just a bit. I don't want to do that, but it's something I got to do. Otherwise, it would drive me nuts, and so it sure as heck isn't going to make the owner happy. I always open these drawers under the bench when I'm doing stuff like with tiny screws. So if it falls, at least it falls in the bench or in the drawer. Well, looks like there might be some dust under this escutcheon, so it can't hurt to take this off anyway. And I can clean it properly that way. Clean it in the sink like I do so many others. It just didn't seem like this one needed it. Okay. Okay, as long as I have this off, I may as well touch it with this. It's still wet with the Howard's Restore, so why not? I'm kind of glad in a way that I had to pull that off, because I didn't realize there was this much dirt underneath there. Okay. Let me try this one more time. Actually, let me stop the recording. I'll go wash this. Well, she didn't ask me to do the cabinet on this, but I just don't feel right not touching it. So there you have it. Well, okay, boys and girls. You know what? I realized after I carried this radio up to my shop, because the lady's coming to pick it up soon, that I had not finished doing a final demo of this thing after I installed the knobs and so forth. So get a load of that. Those are the knobs that I purchased at Renovated Radios. These look really nice, look like beautiful wood, and the truth is they're plastic knobs. And they're made quite well. I've always been pleased with the stuff I get from Renovated Radios. They look natural on the radio. I think they just look fantastic, actually. Here's the radio, what it looks like. Real pleased with the way it turns out. Real happy with it. I think the lady's going to like it. It's just a nice looking radio. Pardon the mess in here. I've been doing some rearranging as I set up my photography studio. And I have had to put some radios out here, and it's made my shop a little crowded for the time being. There it is. All right, let's, it's plugged in. Let's do a little power action and see what it sounds like. Well, being from the mid-1930s, this radio just begs to be hooked up to a tunable loop. So let's give this a whirl, okay? And didn't pick up all that well, being where I'm at up close to the mountains. Check this out.
And we don't have any debt except the mortgage on our house. And they gave.
Now see what happens. You have to tune it with the tunable loop.
$35,000 down in the bank. My wife's a teacher. Her net income monthly.
See that?
Is $3,500.
Now once you find a sweet spot on one station, as you move that tunable loop too.
What are you gonna do for a living? I just started in real estate.
There we go.
Thank you very much, ESPN 700. Talk to you next week.
See how it cuts out that staticky noise? I like that. Now listen carefully. You hear the static? Here we go.
Our daily bread. People often criticize me for mixing business with the Bible, but that's a small price to pay for the many lives that have been transformed.
The great thing is it can pick up more distant stations.
那么接下来呢，便进入我们今天第2个单元的环节——影视剧金曲。影视金曲。
Now this Radio Kami is a real weak station, real low power station, and this antenna really is picking it up nicely.
影视剧金曲呢，今天小头准备了一系列特别有江湖大侠之气的歌。首先推荐的呢，便是来自于马祖。
There, now see how nice and clear K1370 is coming in? There we go. That, my friends, is the idea. All right. I think I've shown you the radio. That's the end of this project. So I'm going to close this one down and get on to the next one, which is going to be a little bit different. All right, guys, from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City on Wednesday, June the 29th, that's the end of this 1934, 35, 36, oh, whatever, I don't know what the hell year it is, Western Air Patrol Model 76. And so until the next project, that's all for now.